Welcome back to the Power and Lifting Podcast. I'm your host, Solana Lewis, and today me and Kristen actually talk about speaker school. Me and Kristen this past weekend took a speaker school, which is all about how to get better at public speaking, how to deliver a keynote, how to capture an audience attention, everything about speaking you learn at speaker school. And we both have very different things you want to do with what we're learning about public speaking. I know some people have hit me up asking me like what my goals are, what I'm really doing. 'Cause I do post like speeches now. I've posted that I've been on stages at this point. And so I think it was a cool time to actually start to give insight on my speaking journey, what I'm doing, what my goals are, and for Kristen to talk about what she learned from speaking school and what her goals are with her public speaking. So I think it was a really cool topic. I hope you guys do enjoy it. And we do give you information about how to join into speaker school. Shout out to Brandon Gay Doris, my speaking coach. Love him, unpaid advertisement. I'll put the information in the show notes. So if you guys are interested in any details, you can see it there. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. All right. I think this is our earliest time doing a podcast.
It's about 7 a.m. And what time did you wake up?
6:20.
Okay, I woke up at 5.
Oh,
Not on
wow.
purpose though. Whenever I sleep in a hotel, I don't sleep well. So I always wake up really early. So when you told me 7, I was like, that's fine, I'll be up. I know it.
That makes sense because like even this past weekend, I was like working by 5:30 in the morning. A lot of time I'm like, see, at home, I'm struggling, like 6:20 alarm. I'm like, no, I don't want to get up.
Yeah, when you stayed at my apartment last week, you were up. I
Yep,
don't even think the sun was up yet, and I think you were on your computer working.
yep.
So
Yeah,
it
no,
was
so I'm
definitely
home. I'm
before
like,
7.
okay. So my body's like, I came to like be busy, so I'm ready to go. But at home, like, yeah, I'd rather sleep like 9, 10 hours. Like,
I know. I don't have anywhere to be today, technically. So I'm like, do I even want to go into the convention center or do I kind of just want to hang out in my hotel and do nothing and chill?
so tell us where you're at.
Yeah. I am in Columbus, Ohio for the Arnold. This is probably my 4th or 5th time coming. I've only competed once. So these other times I was just here to hang out or I was working a booth. So I don't have to work until tomorrow. I'll be with SBD. So if anyone is here, come say hello.
No, I will have this out tonight, so they will hear
I
that.
thought about
No,
that.
but I gotta get this out quickly. Yeah, awesome. I went for 5 years straight, and I only stopped last year because I was just like, I don't really care to with the split. I was like, I don't really think it's gonna be the same vibe. And this year, I'm like, I don't care to compete again. But this year for the Raw Challenge, I think at this point is like full, but like it took months for it to fill. It normally filled up in like 6 minutes. Like
Even
that's how different it is now.
I remember, I think it would open, I forget what time, it was like midnight or
Day and
something.
night.
You would be
It
sitting by the computer. I would have all my info typed out and I would just wait until it hit midnight so I could hit submit. And even then, I never had an issue, but I remember like it would crash and there would be, nothing was working or it'd be full. And we're like,
Yep.
that doesn't seem to be an issue anymore.
Not at all. Girl, they had to be like, "Hey, by the way, it has spots open still." Like, has this been open for like 6 weeks already? Like, what do you mean spots are open?
Yeah, it's not the same. It's kind of sad, actually. I kind of miss competing and hanging out with everyone and seeing people. And it sucks now that I feel like, at least in the US, it's very divided.
Yeah, at this point, you have to just go to Plastic America Nationals to see everyone. That's the
That,
only place you're seeing everybody.
yeah, that's the new one to go to. And it's unfortunate because that's the only big meet, at least before you would have nationals, you would have, well, I guess the Arnold, and then you'd have some sporadic meets here and there. Where for PA at the moment, it's really just raw nationals. And now they're starting with the SBD Raleigh meet last year, and I think they're gonna start adding more meets. So I do think that it'll continue to get bigger. But it's really just nationals is the one where you get to see everyone, and that's kind of sad.
You know, but
Yeah.
I'm happy with the pro meets that are bringing people together. I'm like, I need an excuse to travel and see everyone competing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
so this weekend we went to speaker school, which I like very briefly mentioned one time ever on this podcast, but I didn't like deep dive into it. So now that you know what it is, Kristen, what is speaker school?
The only way that I can explain speaker school is it's basically a public speaking course. I think this one was definitely geared towards people who want to give uh speak to be like a speaker, and they're going to different either conventions or universities and schools and doing public speaking. And the reason that I did it, aside from your gentle encouragement, is because my biggest fear is public speaking. I hate public speaking with a passion. I remember in high school when you'd have to give a presentation, I did not sleep the night before. I would have so much anxiety going in and having the 10 students in the class who probably weren't even paying attention, were just as nervous as me. But I was so afraid to give this presentation, which is funny that we do powerlifting because it's literally just us on the platform and everyone's watching. So interesting how that played out. But so yeah, we ended up going to this speaker school, and basically what it is it kind of forces you to get out of your comfort zone, or at least that's what it seemed like to me. And they put you on the spot and they're asking you random questions. And I had to tell a story about a potato.
Yes.
So talk about on the spot. And I just had to come up with some story that the first thing that came to my mind. But I think it was a good skill. It's a good practice to have because a lot of speeches are going to be rehearsed, and as it should, right? I mean, that's kind of the point of it. But I think there's also something to be said about being put on the spot and then being comfortable being able to respond. Um, I don't know if I explained that well enough or not.
Yeah, I like that. I think some big points about speaker school is you're forced to give a 5 minute keynote speech at the end. And so it is like, it's not, it is a lot of like, we're putting you on the spot to speak in front of the classroom. Our class is probably like 17-ish people total, including the two who were teaching it. But it's also over 3 weeks, there are build-up calls where you are learning how to put together a keynote speech. You're also practicing like giving small pieces of a famous person speech, so you have to like actually be like, hey, like for example, I love this drill. It's like 60 seconds, whatever speech you want to do. So you could do like Martin Luther King Jr. for like 1 minute if you want to, or anything. You can even be like your favorite comedians, like 1 minute of his best set. But it makes you have to watch them and you see how they speak. And the greatest people who are known for their speaking, like you can start to catch on to things that they do, like how they use their hands, their body, how they move on stage, don't just stay in one spot and just stay still. Like so those things that like people don't think about, they make you start to learn it. So that's important. The keynote at the end, some people come in like pretty prepared with the keynote, like or have an idea because they actually have an event coming up. Like, hey, I gotta practice this. It's gonna force me to do it. And some people just like they learn it all in one. My first time, I learned it all in one weekend, and I just gave my first keynote after like I had nothing written down but a title when I walked in the room, and the title I had to change it anyway, so I mean, it didn't even matter. So that's why I like it because it makes you have to learn to speak, and you learn, and the community there is dope because there's so many cool people. They're supportive, and also I network with them all the time now. Like they put me in positions to where I've gotten paid from knowing these people at this point already. So it's really cool.
I think I was the one who did not come prepared for a speech. So I came to class and I think I wrote my speech that morning. But I did have an idea. And it actually, so one of the things that I thought was really cool is they actually teach you how to engage the audience. And these are things that, like you said, we probably don't normally think of. So the first sentence that you say in a presentation matters because that's going to determine whether the audience is engaged or not. And so one of the drills that we did was we just presented our intro, which was no more than 2 minutes, if that. And the Brandon, who is the head of this, he would correct you and say, well, instead of saying this, start with this punchline, which immediately attracts the audience. And that is something that I would have never thought of otherwise. And then teaching you to tell a story, but also I know, and I do this too when I'm nervous, that I tend to go on a tangent. And he was very, like, just cut to the chase. You don't need to give your whole backstory. Just say what you need to say and then move on. And so number one, it was the mannerisms with your feet, your hands moving, walking. You even explained eye contact. I don't think we talked about that in this speaker school, but you said looking up is a sign of insecurity or being unsure of something, I think
Same
you
look at
mentioned.
the ceiling.
Yeah. And so those little things or these little body language that you and I wouldn't notice, we probably pick up on subconsciously, but not, we wouldn't be aware of it that this person is nervous or whatever. But I thought that was kind of my favorite part to it, is just learning the ins and outs of how to give a really good effective speech.
Yeah. Um, I'm so happy you came. So yeah, it's a lot. You learn a lot in a short amount of time. The calls are helpful, but the weekend is packed. And so I want to talk about what is our personal reasoning for one to take something like speaker school.
Hmm.
For me, I even had someone recently. I can't think of her name right now. Like he spoke this past week. We scheduled a podcast on his podcast, and they reached out to me. They're like, "Hey, I see that you're doing like not just powerlifting, which like I followed you for a while, but I know you have a podcast. And now I see that you're working in New York City schools and you're speaking on some stages, and like I want to know everything going on because you have so many different things now." And I'm like, "Okay," because I have been like posting my speaking. I'm like, my posting is just like, "Here you go. I hope you figure out what I'm doing," because like I have no real full blown plan of like how well my content comes out. But I have been speaking. Um when I first took to school, it was just like to kind of see what would come from it. I was like, at worst case scenario, I haven't even done a webinar in like at this point 2 years. I used to do webinars for like powerlifting, like squat, deadlift, whatever. I was like, even that makes me nervous because it's like 25 people in the room and I'm like giving a presentation, right? So I'm like, okay, well, worst case scenario, I want to do like an in-person seminar someday for powerlifting. I can learn better how to do that. And now, after taking the first one, I was like, wait a minute, like I started learning how people in the room actually give keynotes, like get paid like to go places and speak. I'm like, maybe I could do a keynote speech, like get paid for it. Like I don't understand how this works, but I'm gonna try it. And at this point, I've done two keynotes from these two conferences. They were all female conferences. They're mostly about like female empowerment. One was like more religious, but you still have to like invest to come into the room. And the other one was just like it was called Warrior Woman Bomb Global. And it was really just a space where people just encouraged each other and like told their story for like 5 or 10 minutes as a keynote speech. They're like, you have to be prepared. You can't just like ramble for 5 minutes. And then people got to like have their own like tables and booths and like promote themselves. So that was really interesting. And I still can't tell you, I still don't fully grasp that people really get paid to fly out and speak on stage. I still am trying to grasp it fully. Because full transparency, I invested to be in the first two. This past weekend, I did get paid to do a virtual seminar where I did a 5 minute speech. That was my first time ever being paid, which I was like, I got paid to do a 5 minute speech. Like, that's so weird. But yeah, I want to tell my story and wrap it into like a way that motivates people to just become the best version of themselves and the strongest version of themselves, both inside and out. Cause I came from being such an insecure person who was like, my biggest goal in life is like, will I ever have a car that's not run down and be able to move out? Like that was like me, like in all through high school. I was like, will I ever be able to just take care of myself? Like that's all I care about in life. Like That's all I wanted. Like, if I move out and have my own apartment, I've made it. Like, that was, like, the biggest I ever dreamed. Even through college, like, that's the biggest I ever dreamed. Just like, I'll move out someday. Like,
So now that you've accomplished that goal, what's your next goal?
ah, next goal, well, outside of like, I don't care about buying a house, to be honest. I really don't. But next goal in general in life. So like right now, I still love my coaching business. I'm going to start expanding it again because I haven't been taking people on for the past few months. But I love my coaching business. I still love commentating live streams, so I'm doing some more of that this year. But I also, now that I'm working with my business partner for his business, Carl, I work in New York City schools and I teach kids how to podcast. And I actually am the one who like reached out to the school, sets up the contract with the school, and then either I go in or he goes in. And so I'm like really loving it because I'm feel like I'm really impacting the lives of a lot of students who a lot of these schools are in the Bronx and it's a very rundown area and they don't get to like have a space where they can openly talk and express themselves and talk about like really hard things. And we've had some fun ones that are just like cool. We've had deep ones where like I'm talking to kids and they're speaking about gang violence in their neighborhood and how down the street they know who to avoid, who not to avoid. If you get caught in the wrong place in the wrong time, you might like your life might end. How they've like either had murders like near their houses that they know of, or had like family that's been like gunned down by like a gang nearby. And there are kids in the school who are like afterwards I'll talk to teachers and they're like, hey, like not only are they like so happy that we came, but they'll be like, there are certain kids in here that I'm trying so hard to encourage them to not go that route because they wanna seem cool, like, they're in high school, in a rough school, they wanna seem cool, and the cool thing to do is to join the gang, and the cool thing to do is to start stealing, and they see certain kids going that direction, like, "Hey, if you guys can, like, talk about that a little bit, it might start to help us because 'cause we're trying to help them too," but it's like, it's hard because 'cause you're a teacher, like, you have an impact, but they get to go home and choose what they do. So I love what I'm doing. That's why I also love the speaking because it helps me speak to the kids better. It really does. So
And it's
yeah,
probably good practice for you too, just, getting to speak to kids. I mean, that's gonna, benefit them, of course, but you as well too, especially if your goal is to become a better speaker.
yeah, it is. It's been pretty amazing. I get to practice every week. I'm like, oh, I get to practice all the time. Okay, cool.
So how do you think you could implement that into your business of your powerlifting business?
For powerlifting, let me think. Just in general, I really do want to put on some seminars. I think that'd be really cool. And I feel like now my biggest fear for a seminar used to be like, but then I have to speak and talk. And now I'm like, oh, I have so many ideas if I could do like an interactive seminar where I speak to everybody and I won't be nervous because I feel like I can really get their attention, teach them in a quick and efficient way. And so that'd be really dope to do, which I want to plan. I should plan it. I haven't planned it. I need to plan it.
And, would you do it in Jersey?
I wouldn't mind Jersey or New York probably to start, but I wouldn't mind, like, doing it somewhere else.
Yeah. Would you do it
Um,
alone?
I could, but I wouldn't mind collabing either. I think it'd be fun because then you can get more people in the room and, like, someone helps you get the people in the room. That's the scary part too, getting the people in the room.
Having a seminar and no one signs up?
Womp womp. Like,
Oh,
that's my biggest fear at this point. Like,
yeah,
no one
right?
seminar. Um, but I will say too, because they teach storytelling, even when I'm speaking to my clients, I'm kind of learning how to like use that daily. So like example, I have some clients that are very, very into powerlifting and they get like easily discouraged sometimes. They're like, yo, like this day moves so poorly. And look for me as a coach, I'm looking at like you're brand new to the sport. Like you started 6 weeks ago. Before that, you didn't know what an arch was. You didn't know what sumo was. You didn't know that you were doing high bar the whole time. You had no idea. So I'm like looking at like you're doing great, and they're like I'm failing. And instead of being like, hey, like you're new to the sport, like you made so much progress, so just keep it up. I'm like, I can talk about how when I started a decade ago, literally a decade ago, I would get discouraged too. And like certain things that I did that now looking back it made me cringe, but how much I've improved since then. Instead of just trying to like be like, get over it, be like you're being fine. So like that storytelling aspect has helped me in like every part of my life. Like I've literally encouraged friends to like change their mindset on something that's a big deal where I'm like, they came to me in confidence. I could have just been like, "You're being silly. This is crazy," right? But instead, I'm like, "Let me just tell you something similar that happened to me, and then it'll probably impact the way your way of thinking versus me trying to be like, you gotta and you have to." And so that's how I implement it every day.
It kind of humanizes you.
No, it does.
No, I mean, like when you're talking to a client, right? And they look up to you, but you also have shit going on. You're stressed. And so when you tell a story, it's like, okay, she she is human. She's a person and she has feelings and makes mistakes and gets sad and all the things that other pretty much everyone else does, so it's probably going to be a nice relief to your clients, and I guess that kind of helps build the rapport with them. So
100%. All right, your turn. Why'd you take speaker school?
aside from my gentle push.
Yes.
So the speaker school was actually in Miami, and you said you were coming down and you had encouraged me to sign up, but I also had been wanting to take a public speaking course of some sort, but I probably never would have if I wasn't pushed. It's just, one of those, oh, one day maybe I'll look into it. But the reason that I wanted to do it is because, as I said, I hate public speaking. It's one of my biggest fears. But the only way to overcome those fears is to make yourself uncomfortable and put yourself in those uncomfortable situations so that when you are giving a speech, you know what to do, you know what to say, you're prepared. And that was part of the reason that I chose to take it, just because I don't know if I necessarily want to be a keynote speaker per se and get paid to give speeches. Maybe that'll change, but right now, for what I'm doing with school as a PhD student, is I ultimately will have to give presentations, whether it's to defend my research or giving a presentation at a conference. So the NSCA conference, for example, they'll give 1 hour speaking sessions to these well-known, whether it's a professor or researcher, um, renowned coach. This is also a requirement. Well, not a requirement for school, but for my mentor, is he wants me to give a presentation at one of these conferences. And that is such a scary thought. But if I come prepared and I know what to do and I know what to say, then I think I could pull it off. So that was mainly my reason for wanting to do it, is because I'm gonna have to as part of my career.
Love it. I
Yeah.
mean, it makes sense, right? If you're gonna have to do that to learn how to not bore the crowd to death, to be honest. Like I feel like I've been to certain where did I go? Now I can't think of the company. I went to some really big, like 1 day seminar that was like pretty well known. Was it? It wasn't Nasm. I don't even know. But they had people come up. Like Mike T was there. And there was another person with a doctorate like for nutrition who's very, very well known who was speaking.
Mike Israetel?
Oh, it was Mike Tell. Oh my god, not Mike Tisher.
Yeah,
It was Mike Tell.
sounds about right.
Sounds about right. So anyway, and then there was someone else, right? And I remember sitting there. Mike, first of all, Mike was amazing. Mike was actually dope. But there
He's
were
fun.
certain people who were there, and I was like, I feel like you're just like reading a book to me. And I understand that we did invest money to learn about like the nitty-gritty science of certain things. But there is a way to say stuff that will keep us tension. And there's a way that's to say stuff that will just be like, I could have just bought the book, like this is rough, right? There's a way to have slides that will just give you an idea of what they're talking about. And then there's like, I have a book on the slide where there's 25 sentences on the slide and I'm squinting to read the slide. I want to just die, right? So I feel like this is so good because I have been to in situations where I'm like, I wish I was more into this because I paid for this. but I wouldn't have understood what it was that made it so uninteresting in the moment until learning more about how to speak and engage an audience, capture their attention, but still get your full point across. Like you should be able to walk away and be like, I got this from that talk. Not like I got my brain hurts and I don't know. That might happen if it's an hour lecture, right? But like, at the end of the day, like you shouldn't walk away like I don't know what I learned. I need to rewatch that whole thing on a video and take notes and
I'm glad that you brought that up because that is something that I've subconsciously noticed. And now that you mention it, when I'm taking classes and it's a professor that's really engaged in the topic, you enjoy that class, right? Because it's engaging, they're fun, you can tell that they're passionate about what they're doing, as opposed to another professor who's he just wants to do research and he has to do this class, as a part of his requirement, and he doesn't want to be there and he just reads off the slides and can't wait for class to be over and go do his thing. And I think Mike Isertel is one of those who really is passionate about what he does and what he speaks. And he's always fun to listen to when he's giving presentations. One, because just some of the shit he says is just insane. And I'm like, I cannot believe you just said that out loud. Like that came out of your mouth. And then a part of me is like, did you say, because he was a college professor at Temple for a while. And a part of me is like, did you say that when you were in class? Like he would have been such a fun professor. And then, like you said, then there's other people who you can tell just don't want to be there. And that kind of, you can tell the difference between a good presenter and someone who maybe lacks some of the experience. Lane Norton is another one who he's a great he loves public speaking, but he's been doing it for so long. So he's good at it and he's passionate about, sometimes you can't get him to shut up, right? So those are one of the things that I hope over time that as I continue to do it, that I become more comfortable to the point where I'm that, oh, I love when Kristen gives her talk, she talks, says crazy shit, but it's fun and it's engaging. And um, yeah, I think I'll get there at some point, hopefully.
you, you will. You totally will.
Yeah.
Even just thinking back, like I remember, oh, not even I remember my whole life since I graduated college. I graduated at 20 years old, so I'm 28, and I remember getting the freaking like degree, and I was like, thank God I never have to go to a class again till the day I die. Right? Because I really, even to this day, I'm like, I don't really love college. Like, there's a place for it, cool, but I don't really, personally, I don't need it for what I'm doing. But the reason I despised school my whole life was every teacher, I feel like, besides like two, just like rambled, they were boring, they did not care, or like maybe they care, but they just like, their presence was very much like, try to remember 45 minutes of stuff I'm saying and cross your fingers. And deep down, it's like I used to always be so frustrated with the school system, right? Because I'm like, school's not made for people like me. But really, the teacher makes all the difference. Like the teacher, the way they speak to you makes the difference. It's not that school may not be for me. It's I'm not meant to sit here and be bored for 8 hours. That's what it is. It's not fair that I'm being yelled at for being bored when you're so boring. Like, so like teachers, like they change everything. Like you can be like me and end up walking out of school like, wow, I hated all everything. I hated college, high school, middle school, lower school. I hated all of it. Like so you can end up like me, or you can be that teacher that's like that like changes the kid's perspective and makes them want to become a teacher one day.
Mhm. And I think I brought that up of my trajectory of powerlifting and exercise and how I ended up where I am is due to this professor that I had. And when I had him, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I didn't know what I was wanted to do. I knew I liked working out. So I saw a degree that said exercise science. I was like, oh, this is the science of I had no idea what it was. I was just like, I like to exercise and exercise, it's a science of exercise. Like, I didn't look into it. I just, ooh, that sounds cool. And I had this professor who really, really made a difficult topic really easy to understand and really fun. And he was so into it that made me into it and wanting to work with him and learn more about what it was that he was doing in the lab. And it kind of, that was my introduction to powerlifting, was working in that lab. So I do think that having a good mentor or a good professor, speaker, whatever, you can really change someone's life, you know? And that's kind of crazy to think about, is even you working with these kids right now. Uh, they may have met you and they may have, I don't know, maybe they decide they want to go and make a successful podcast that's gonna, compete with Joe Rogan or something, who knows, right?
Right?
But they never would have had that opportunity if they had not met you at that school. So I think that's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, I think my goal with the kids too is just like to give them a positive influence. It would be dope if I helped shape the next Joe Rogan or something,
Right?
right?
Never
But
know.
outside of that, it's like it's also dope if like one podcast changed their perspective and like they never forget it and it helps them out in life.
Mhm.
I've literally there's certain schools like and mind you, I went to private schools, like mostly Caucasian private schools. I did not grow up with money, but my mom was a teacher. So at the first school, she got a deep discount because I was a student at her school. And then when I nearly fell out of school, so I had to switch schools because I was like just not doing well. She got a discount, and then on top of that, my parents put all their money into my school. Like they were like the first, all we want is a good education. So we did not have money. Like I had like one pair of shoes for the full school year. Like we're gonna go to a thrift store to get our shopping for the year, and like you're good. Like I hope we don't grow too much because this is what you're wearing for the next year, right? But like they put me in these nice schools, and now I go to schools. I'm like, I didn't know kids were doing crazy things in high school. Like that was what I saw on TV. It's a learning curve for me. Like I did not think about having sex in high school, Kristen. It didn't cross my mind. It
Good.
it never did. The stuff
Good.
I learned from the kids, I'm like, oh, I know.
The kids now that you work with?
I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. Okay. I understand where y'all are at, and I can maybe say some things that can encourage you to not get pregnant at 15. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, there's certain things I'm learning where I'm like, I have to be that positive person. I can tell by how you're speaking to me that at home, no one is telling you to do anything about being smart about that area of your life and you're trying to be cool. And we also have all this music now. It's like City Girls that they're rapping in the hallway. And it's like the nastiest music, but like it affects the way you think. Like you're a kid thinking that these lyrics are cool, hanging out with your friends that think, oh, that's cool. Going home, your parents don't really care. And like if I don't say something, I might find out they're not here next semester for that reason, right? So it's stuff like that. So like, yeah, if I make the next show, we're gonna dope. But if I just help you learn something important that changes how you think about things, so that you can make better choices in your young age with your undeveloped brain, I'll be so happy.
Huge. That's huge. And you probably make a much bigger impact than you think. So that's kind of cool.
That's the hope.
Yeah. What's funny is now that I think about it, so a big fear of mine is public speaking. I said that before. I remember when my first basketball game, I was so nervous. I like this is me in like fourth grade, also, by the way. And I was so freaking nervous. Again, I like don't think I slept the day before. My heart was out of my chest. And I'm like 10 or however old you are in fourth grade. Like no one's really looking at me to being like, oh, she sucks. Like we all sucked. We were 10. And but it was like after that first game, I I fell in love with it. And my mom got me like a basketball hoop and a basketball, and every day after school, I would go home and I would just shoot the ball. I would just shoot it, dribble, whatever, until, my parents called me in for dinner. That next year, I went from being no idea what I was doing to being like this. Again, this is in fifth grade at this point, starting point guard.
Woo!
Yeah. And I was the best player on the team. And it was just when I find something that I love, I just go head first into it. And that's kind of what happened to me with powerlifting is my first meet. First of all, it took me 2 years to compete because I was so afraid of competing. And again, the night before, I did not sleep, hearts, going out of my chest. I hated it. I was like, this is, oh, that I tried to pull out. And of course, I ended up doing the meet and then I'm finished. I'm like, ooh, when's the next one? And then that was, I went headfirst into I eat, live, and breathe powerlifting. It was just, I love it. And I still get nervous going up on stage when people are looking at you, but it's like you're confident because you know what you're capable of and you know that you're strong. So even though I'm nervous, I'm still like, I'm that bitch, right? Like I'm so that's kind of like a good feeling. And I hope ultimately is having done this speaker school that I even said to him when I was done, I was like, I did not want to do this. I almost didn't want to show up on Sunday. I wanted to call you and be like, oh, I don't know, my car doesn't start or something. And like, I don't want to go. I didn't. Obviously, I thought about it. I didn't do it, but it definitely crossed my mind. So I went, and then after once that 5 minute keynote speech was done, and of course I'm sitting in my chair losing my shit because I'm like, oh my God, I just want it to be done and over with. He's gonna call me. And I give up and I give this presentation. And as I'm going and I start getting into it, right? And at the end of the day, everyone knows it's like my first time. They don't expect me to be this, on a TED Talk kind of thing. Um, I think I did better than what they thought I would do.
I don't think anyone thought she would do bad. Like,
But I mean, again, the standards were probably very low. So when I say I did well, I think it was just there was not this high expectation of me. But it was fun. And I remember saying after we sat in this little group and we kind of just talked about what we learned, what our thoughts were. And I said, I was honest that I didn't want to be there, but I'm like, ready to go. I want to sign up again. That was fun. I had a good time. And it was great to meet people, networking from people, all over different fields. There was the nurse, the mom and daughter. The mom was like a
yeah.
PhD. Um,
PhD like of nursing, right? Like
yeah, and her research was focused on like malpractice in the hospital. And for example, someone leaving a surgical utensil, I don't know, inside the body or something, like these crazy things. And then her daughter was this celebrity
stylist,
fashion, what was she? Fashion designer or fashion
stylist.
stylist, like fashion stylist. Um, yeah, I mean, there were just people from all these different fields, coming together and learning about each other. And that was kind of a really cool experience. And, um, hopefully I can, some of them that were in Miami, I would love to hit them up again and say, hey, let's hang out. So it was also a way to make friends. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, the group chat is right there, girl. You can just
Oh, I'm friends with, I already follow and
you know, I
we're
follow.
all Instagram friends now. It's fine.
um I think to kind of tie it back to powerlifting, what's crazy is like we've gone on. I mean, me, you've been to worlds, right? Like we've gone to the biggest stage and competed, and it's hard to get to a point where like you push yourself to do that because everyone gets imposter syndrome at worlds. Like, everyone gets imposter syndrome. Even like primetime national, your first one, you're like, should I even be here? Oh my god. And then like you go to do public speaking, and it's like it's not that you're not used to being in front of the audience, but it's a whole different thing because yeah, you might feel your lift and you walk away, but like now you have to sit there and get their attention for 5, 10, 15 an hour. Like it's so different. But at the same time, I do thank powerlifting for having me be put in front of an audience, which also led me to do my podcast. So I'm used to at least speaking, just not in front of live audiences. I think that everything I've done so far with commentary, live streaming, having my podcast, competing, has really put me into positions where I'm like, I can do this because I've already done some hard stuff. So like, let's just go for it. So I think powerlifting for like the whole journey I'm on. I don't know where the hell I'm gonna end up, but I just like it. I think it's like saying yes to hard things that could lead to something good.
Yeah. I will say that it's very different doing a podcast sitting at home in your apartment alone as opposed to if you and I were doing this podcast in front of an audience. I would be I would be extremely nervous, but I don't know, maybe it's because it's just me talking to my computer for an hour.
Even a live podcast is like more nerve wracking than this. I'm like, at the end of the day, I can just click a button and get off this thing. So I'm really not that nervous. Even if I had someone on, I'm like, I looked up to you for years. I'm still at my house. Like I'm not that nervous.
Right? Yeah. So it's funny.
Um, we did it. All right, y'all. So that's some insight on our public speaking journey from the weekend.
10 out of 10 recommend. It was, what was it? Warm Hearts.
Warm heart life.
If you are interested, definitely Brandon was awesome. And Carl, they were both really great. So this is our unpaid
Right?
unpaid promotion. Shout out to Brandon and Carl.
Yes, I'll put their info in the bio so you guys can know about the next speaker school. I will also say there a lot of them are in Stamford, Connecticut, because that's like where they're based out of. So I'm at like all of them because it's an hour from my house. There's one going to be in Austin in the summer. They're doing Miami every single year at the same time,
And
and then
then Laguna Beach
February.
in
And Laguna
California.
Beach is I think around September. That one was fun. That's in California. So that's where they've gone so far. If they add more to it, I'll let you know. I'm pretty sure that's it for this year, location wise.
Check it out.
Yes. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for listening and catch you next time. Chris and have fun at the Arnold's.
I shall.
Hey, I'll have fun at home, not being at the Arnold's. I
You're not missing out. Don't worry.
feel like I'm not. It's so sad. But anyway, all right. Bye, everybody.